Over the last 7 or 8 years of doing YouTube videos covering all the latest products in the coffee realm, from tools to machines and grinders, there has been one comment that seems to always persist, and it's become kind of a big pet peeve of mine. And that is the misconception or opinion that products made or built in China are somehow lesser. Now, obviously, this isn't the majority of people, but it is a surprisingly vocal minority. So I wanted to put this video together and do something just so I have my thoughts on the record. And I think the real crux of this issue is that there is just a general lack of understanding, at least here in the Western world, about Chinese manufacturing, with the most common trope being they are made poorly or cheaply, or just will generally fall apart after a short period of time. And I think there is just so many misconceptions and just a general anti-China sentiment that has gone on for generations, to the point where these sort of opinions are more or less a knee-jerk reaction. So I figured making a video sort of combating those misconceptions based on my experience talking to people who've built equipment in China, my experience with equipment built in China, and just a few other gems I found along the way could make for a bit of an interesting video. But before we dive deep into all this, a quick word from this video's sponsor. If you're into coffee, its culture, and learning about the world around it, Standart magazine is the perfect addition to your brew bar or coffee table. With quarterly releases, they shed light on issues both inside and outside of the cafe, highlighting people who elevate the industry, and deep dives into new ideas around all things coffee. To sweeten the deal even further, each issue also includes a sample of coffee from some of the best roasters on the planet to give you the full sensory experience. You really can't beat the combination of fresh coffee and fresh print. So head on over to standartmag.com/Prometheus or use code Sprometheus at checkout to snag $5 off your very own subscription of coffee and culture, shipped direct to your door nearly anywhere in the world with a money-back guarantee. And if you're still on the fence, you can actually try Standart today for just the cost of shipping. There's not much to lose, and there's a whole lot to gain. All right, so now let's get into the meat of the video. And essentially what I'm going to do is cover the two most common arguments or takes that I've heard in my comment section over the years. And the first one and the biggest one is that labor in China is cheap, therefore the products that come out of China aren't made well. Now, this is one of those conversations that can easily go down the road of human rights abuses. We talk about forced labor, child labor, all of which can or could be happening in China, but also in the US. And I don't really want to get bogged down on that conversation because in the end, no one in this conversation comes out smelling like roses. But the big reason as to why so much is built and manufactured in China is the fact that they have the skilled workers, the sheer number of skilled workers, and also the infrastructure and factories and tooling that can make it happen. Nothing shows the disparity more than a 2021 study by the National Science Board that shows 127,000 bachelor's degrees in engineering and 105,000 in computer science in the US compared to a combined 1.5 million in China. And even more recently, an article published on everyone's least favorite social media, LinkedIn, shows that China's engineering workforce was estimated to be between 4.5 to 5 million. But honestly, none of this is new. Tim Cook of Apple talked about it almost a decade ago.
The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. The truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. The reason is because of the skill and the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art.
So now that we've covered the labor section of this, let's talk about the quality section, that the products made in China are poorly made. Now, this misconception, I think, is very common. And unfortunately, like a lot of these misconceptions and these opinions, they're built on all sorts of isms, which is a different conversation entirely. But the fact of the matter is, China, like any other country that produces or manufactures things, they have the capability of producing both high and low quality items. For example, and since this is a coffee channel, let's talk about coffee gear. You can look at some of the most highly regarded pieces of coffee equipment over the last handful of years. You've got the DF64, you've got the Niche Zero, and you have the Optional P64, all of which I've owned, all of which I've had no issues with for many, many years, and all of which are made in China. Also, there's a price difference from about, $400 all the way up to $1,800 to $2,000 for the option O. So there is a wide array of parts, pieces, materials, motors, and of course, marketing that goes into determining the price of these pieces of equipment. And honestly, I don't really think this even needs to be said out loud, but I'm going to say it. I don't think that the final quality of a product is tied in any way to where it's built. Instead, when you want a product built and you go to a factory, you set the parameters, you set the specifications, you set the oversight, you set the materials, you set what you want. And when something comes out of a factory, whether it be from China or anywhere else, and it's low quality, that's what the person who ordered it wanted. They set forth those standards, and they usually do it to save costs and boost profit margins. And it's just basically as simple as that. In the end, I think the misconceptions or opinions about products made in China, whether it be coffee or anything else, needs to be ditched, though that is easier said than done. Those types of opinions seem to run pretty deep, especially in the West. But if you take a step back and you know a little bit about geopolitics, and you look at companies, for instance, like Weber Workshops or Decent that are based out of Taiwan, or SSP Burrs, which are based in Korea, and those are all highly regarded, highly respected, setting the bar types of companies, at least in the coffee scene, people seem to feel that way. But the only through line between all those companies that kind of misses China is the fact that they're not an ally. Instead, they're the competition. So that makes them the boogeyman. So in summary, it's kind of ridiculous to look at China and manufacturing in China and consider it to be lesser. The reason why companies go to China to have things built isn't because they can get low labor costs. It's because it's a lower cost to manufacture because they have so many skilled workers, they have the factories, and they have the infrastructure to do it, to produce a product in a cost-effective way. In the grand scheme, a product is pretty much destined to be low quality from concept to design. It's not where it's built. It's not the factory that made it. But on that note, I think it's time I start wrapping this one up. And as always, pass the conversation on to you. So is the Made in China moniker something you've thought much about? And if you have, is it something that you've looked at in terms of understanding where that stuff kind of comes from? Or did you have any sort of preconceived notions about gear or coffee gear specifically made in China that maybe I challenged with the points I brought up in this video? Drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications when new videos drop. Check out my Instagram at Sprometheus for more coffee content. Help support the channel by considering becoming a member for exclusive access. And as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.